The emergency klaxons wailed through the Galactic Council's crystalline chambers as Council Prime Thek-Tar desperately tried to restore order. Around him, 68 civilizations argued, screeched, pulsed, and vibrated in languages that overwhelmed even the quantum translation matrices. Order. O-R-D-E-R. Thek-Tar bellowed, his massive cephalopod form flashing angry red patterns. We must address the human crisis. The crisis in question sat calmly in the human delegations section. Ambassador David Park, wearing jeans and a t-shirt that read, "I'm not arguing. I'm just explaining why I'm right." He was reading what appeared to be a paperback novel and occasionally chuckling at something on the pages. Ambassador Park. Thek-Tar's voice cracked with strain. The Zephyrian Trade Consortium demands immediate negotiations regarding territorial disputes in the Outer Spiral. David looked up from his book, something called Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and shrugged. Nope. The single word triggered a fresh wave of chaos. The Zephyrian delegation erupted in harmonic shrieks. The crystalline Vexana representatives began resonating at frequencies that shattered 3 ceremonial displays. Energy beings flickered between visible spectrums in patterns that indicated severe distress. You cannot simply refuse. Ambassador Klex II of the Meridian Federation protested, his forearms gesticulating wildly. The territorial dispute affects 17 systems. Trade routes worth trillions of credits are at stake. David turned a page. Still, nope. Councillor Prexther, her energy form crackling with frustration, projected herself closer to the human section. This is madness. The Galactic Accords require all spacefaring species to participate in conflict resolution. Show me where I sign those, David said without looking up. The chamber fell silent, except for the continued wailing of alarm systems. Thek-Tar's chromatophores shifted through the entire emotional spectrum before settling on a queasy green. The Galactic Accords are universal law, he stammered. All civilizations are bound by. Says who? David asked, finally closing his book and giving the council his full attention. Did humanity get to vote on these universal laws? Were we consulted when you decided that territorial disputes require formal negotiation frameworks? General Vorthak of the hegemony leaned forward menacingly. Your species benefited from galactic civilization. You use our trade routes, our communication networks, our… Actually, no. David pulled out a tablet and began reading from it. Humans use hyperspace routes we discovered independently. Our communication networks are quantum entanglement systems we developed ourselves. Our ships run on fusion reactors we built from scratch. What exactly have we borrowed from you? The silence stretched uncomfortably as the assembled civilizations realized they couldn't answer that question. Furthermore, David continued cheerfully, your territorial disputes involves 2 species fighting over mining rights to asteroids in empty space. Empty space, I might add, that humans have been using as a shipping lane for the past 30 years. Irrelevant, shrieked Ambassador Thek-Tar of the Trade Consortium. The Vorthon Collective has ancestral claims to that region dating back to last Tuesday, David interrupted, checking his tablet. When they filed the paperwork. Amazing how ancestry works in bureaucracy. The Vorthon delegation began making aggressive clicking sounds. Their translator struggled before producing. The human insults our sacred heritage. I'm stating facts, David replied. Your ancestral claim is based on a religious vision one of your mystics had about shiny rocks belonging to your people. The Zephyrian claim is based on a mathematical equation that supposedly proves geometric ownership of spherical space. Neither of you actually lives there, mines there, or has ever been there. Thek-Tar's tentacles writhed in distress. But without negotiation, without framework for resolution, there will be chaos. War? Destruction. David stood up and stretched. Maybe. Or maybe they'll figure it out themselves like adults. The human delegation section suddenly filled with additional people who hadn't been there moments before. They appeared to simply walk in from directions that didn't exist, carrying folding chairs and picnic baskets. "Oh, good," said a woman who materialized next to David. "Did we miss anything important?" "Just the part where the council wants us to negotiate a territorial dispute between two species who are fighting over empty space they've never visited," David replied. The newcomers burst into laughter. One of them, an elderly man in a fishing hat, wiped tears from his eyes. "Oh, that's rich. Let me guess, they want formal arbitration proceedings with subcommittees and impact studies." 17-stage mediation process, David confirmed, followed by resource allocation hearings and cultural sensitivity reviews. More humans continued arriving through impossible doorways. Some carried musical instruments. Others had art supplies. A few appeared to be setting up what looked suspiciously like a barbecue grill. "WHOARETHESAPEOP," Dektar demanded, his voice cracking entirely. "Humans," David said simply. "Turns out when you don't waste time on pointless negotiations, you have more energy for interesting things. Like figuring out how to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously." A human woman began playing a violin. The music was beautiful, complex, and seemed to make the chamber's crystalline structure resonate in harmonious ways that improved the acoustics dramatically. "This is a sacred diplomatic space," General Vorthak protested. "Says who?" asked the elderly man in the fishing hat. "We didn't agree to your sacred designations. Far as we're concerned, this is just a big room where people argue about nonsense." A group of human children ran past, chasing what appeared to be a small dragon made of pure light. The dragon giggled an impossible sound from an impossible creature as it playfully dodged between the legs of increasingly bewildered alien diplomats. "How are they doing this?" whispered Dr. Valex of the Science Consortium. "The dimensional barriers, the impossible manifestations." "Easy," said David, accepting a sandwich from someone who had apparently materialized a full delicatessen. "When you stop wasting consciousness on bureaucracy, you discover that reality is much more flexible than your regulations allow." The barbecue grill was now producing impossible smells that made every species present suddenly hungry for foods they'd never heard of. A human teenager was demonstrating something that looked like controlled gravity manipulation to a group of fascinated Ketani youngsters who had somehow appeared in the diplomatic section. Dektar watched in horror as the sacred order of galactic diplomacy dissolved into what appeared to be a cross-species block party. This is fun," suggested the woman with the violin, who was now teaching a crystalline being how to dance. "UNAC, CAPT, a BLA." Dektar roared. The humans paused in their various activities and looked at him with genuine curiosity. "Why?" asked David. The question hung in the air, like a physical presence. Around the chamber, alien diplomats found themselves unable to answer. Why was spontaneous joy unacceptable? Why was direct interaction between species forbidden outside formal channels? Why did everything require committees and frameworks and bureaucratic approval? "Because," Dektar began, then stopped. His chromatophores flickered uncertainly. "Because that's how things are done." "Says who?" The humans asked in unison, then burst into laughter at their own synchronicity. As the laughter echoed through the chamber, something fundamental shifted. Several alien species found themselves smiling an expression their faces weren't designed for, but somehow managed anyway. A few began tentatively approaching the human gathering. "This is madness," General Vorthak muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. "This is Tuesday," David corrected, checking his watch. Tuesdays are for refusing to negotiate pointless disputes and instead doing interesting things with interesting people. The elderly man in the fishing hat looked up from teaching a group of energy beings how to whistle. Besides, your territorial dispute resolved itself 20 minutes ago. What? Shrieked the Zephyrian and Vorthan delegations simultaneously. Turns out, the man continued, when you actually talk to each other instead of filing competing claims, you discover that one group wants to mine metallic asteroids and the other wants to study crystalline formations. Different rocks, different goals, no conflict. David nodded. Amazing what happens when people communicate directly, instead of through 17-stage mediation processes. As the council session devolved completely into an impromptu festival of interspecies friendship, the Ktar slumped in his ceremonial seat and realized that the humans hadn't just refused to negotiate. They had made negotiation obsolete. And somehow, impossibly, everything was working better because of it.